A very warm welcome to all the participants. We will take another 5 minutes because there are a lot of people still joining in. So please give us 5 minutes before we start the webinar today. Hi, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. I hope I'm visible and audible now. He made
Absolutely.
that mess up. I think he stole the password from one of your assistants and then he entered. I was telling him this may not be
Yeah,
the
yeah.
panelist one, so good.
Yeah, no, we're glad you made it.
Thank you.
So there's still a few people joining in, ma'am. We'll start in 5 minutes or so.
I'm fine. No problem.
I think it's 7 past the scheduled time. If all the panelists are okay, shall we start the proceedings? There are some members who are joining, but we can initiate the discussion if it's okay with all of you.
Yeah, fine with me.
Okay, great. So can I request all the panelists to please be visible on the video? Can I request the panelists to switch on the videos? Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very warm welcome to all the panelists. And thank you, dear participants, for taking time out and joining us. I'm Dr. Malini. I represent an organization called Administrative Staff College of India, based out of Hyderabad. We're an organization which was started in 1956, and we have a very strong urban governance portfolio. Within that, we work in the areas of water and sanitation. We support national ministry and the various state governments. Our work spans across policy implementation and providing technology and knowledge support to cities and state governments. This webinar is organized in partnership with an organization called SIPS, which you can see. It's called the Center for Innovations in Public Systems, a fabulous organization which works towards developing knowledge products and disseminating innovations to different state governments with the objective of promoting innovations and implementing innovations at scale across sectors, including water and sanitation. Next slide, Devika. So we have joined hands, ASCII and SIPS, essentially to, Devika, next slide, please.
Now, I think this is time.
The slides are not moving.
Visible right now. I've already shifted them on.
I think you should stop sharing a screen and then again share a screen.
Yeah, just reshare it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So ASCII and SIPS has joined hands. I'm thankful to Dr. Harsh for joining. He's the head of the organization, which is SIPS. We have joined hands to see that gender equality and women's leadership in water and sanitation becomes an integral conversation, integral part of conversation and action in all the states. You know, all of us know that there is a gross underrepresentation of women in social, economic, and political decision making, particularly in the sector of water and sanitation. This is in spite of the fact that women bear the maximum burden of poor services related to water sanitation. The policies and cities are typically most often and typically designed by men and for men, and they continue to look at women at best as beneficiaries, and the time when they would look at women as equal partners in designing services and taking decisions and being change leaders who could drive change is yet to take place, is yet to happen. And that is the reason why that is the purpose behind holding this webinar. What you see on the screen, Dave, can you just make it full screen, please? What you see on the screen is essentially a model that is proposed by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with whom we work very closely and who are great supporters of promoting sanitation in India. What we see is a model where women and girls empowerment is seen as a function of three things. It's as a function of resources, as a function of institutional structures, as a function of agency. And what are the core expressions of these? When we talk about resources, we are talking about both tangible and intangible resources being made available. It could be safety, it could be security, it could be health, it could be financial, knowledge products, and time. Can we make time as a resource available to women so that they can do what they genuinely want to do and not always focus on what they have to do? Poor access to water and sanitation puts a lot of burden on women's time, taking them away from economic activities where they can be much more productive. We're talking about institutional structures. These are social arrangements, could be formal, informal social arrangements, rules, practices that are laid out, what kind of changes are required here in order to provide women with an opportunity that they deserve. And then finally, we're looking at agency. And this is where we are talking in terms of how do we bring decision-making powers to women? How do we encourage leadership? How do we bring in collective action so that this entire process of empowerment is enabled? Next slide, Dave. So we are extremely grateful that all of you have joined today. We've received very encouraging participation, not just from India, but we have participants from across the world. Thank you very much for sharing very interesting, pertinent questions. We have taken cognizance and we will be asking our panelists those questions. And with this, I would like to quickly introduce you to our esteemed panel members. Our first panelist is someone I respect and genuinely look forward to as a role model, Dr. Sridevi. She's an IAS officer and she's currently the Special Secretary to the Finance Department, Government of Telangana. In her earlier role as the Commissioner and Directorate of Municipal Administration, she has championed the state's policy on fecal sludge and septage management. She was instrumental in leading the state to think beyond just building toilets. It was in her era or her duration that has set the ground for establishment of 71 fecal sludge treatment plants across all of urban Telangana. And she's a gender and diversity proponent, and she's done excellent work in this team, and we look forward to learning from her. Thank you very much for joining, ma'am. Welcome to the webinar. Our next panelist is Dr. Kajal, an IAS officer who's currently serving as the Director of Urban Local Bodies, the Government of Uttar Pradesh. Devika, your slides are not moving. Thank you. So welcome, Dr. Kajal. Dr. Kajal has a background in medicine, and she has an MS in global health. She works currently as a Director of Urban Local Bodies with the Government of Uttar Pradesh. She has brought in several path-breaking changes, and we will be requesting her to speak later on about some of her initiatives, particularly the Sambhav initiative that she has taken. Thank you very much for joining us, ma'am, and welcome to the program. Our next panelist is Ms. Pamela Satpathy. A pleasure to interact with her always. I'm an ardent follower of her on her Twitter handle. Dr. Pamela is the Municipal Commissioner of Greater Warangal Municipal Corporation. She's the Vice Chairman of the Smart City Warangal Corporation, as well as the Kakatiya Urban Development Authority. She has taken several path-breaking initiatives for ensuring that women get into the mainstream of activities, whether it is bringing women and transgender self-help groups into maintenance with formal contracts, maintenance of public toilets and community toilets with formal contracts, whether it is promoting entrepreneurship through her ventures related to sanitary pads, whether it is provision of cooked meals to the women sanitary workers, particularly during COVID times, who've been extremely busy and could not really spend time at home and have been dedicating their time in our service. A genuine person with a kind heart. Welcome, ma'am, and thank you so much for joining us today. Our next panelist is Ms. Kirti. Ms. Kirti is going to bring us, Devika, next slide. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Kirti, for joining us. She's an IAS officer, and she's currently working as the Deputy Commissioner of Kachchar in Assam. Ma'am, I hope I got the pronunciation right. And she is our representative from the seven sisters. We look forward to listening to her about how things are different, if at all, in the northeastern state versus how they are here. She has taken several initiatives focused on empowering women, from menstrual hygiene management related enterprises to activities related to promotion. She's also started many programs related to health and hygiene and sanitation to benefit women. Thank you very much, ma'am. Welcome. We are now joined by Ms. Priya Nayak. She is the CEO of an organization called Samhita Social Ventures, one of the most straightforward, practical, forthwith individuals that I have come across. Her organization was the first one who, after the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji had announced the Swachh Bharat mission, had taken an active role in developing plans for companies to help them understand how they can participate in this journey that India had taken up. While her organization supports several sectors, water and sanitation and nutrition and social entrepreneurship and clean energy are some of the sectors that she has focused on and always work towards holistic empowerment of women. Thank you, Ms. Priya, for joining us. Our next panelist is Ms. Deepti. Deepti was working in United States, and she was pulled out of United States and asked to support the government of Telangana. She is the CEO of WeHub, which is Government of Telangana's incubation hub for women entrepreneurs. This is the first in India, which is India's first state-led incubator exclusively for women entrepreneurs. We have much to learn from her experience. It has an ethos of recognizing an entrepreneur for who she is, irrespective of the background. So the organization is sector agnostic. It is also looking at supporting women across the social, different walks of life and different groups. Thank you, Deepti, for joining us today. I'm the next panelist, so I'm going to skip my slide. I'm a professor at ASCII, but I have a background in management. I'm joined by my colleague, Devika. Devika, next slide. She's an architect and planner, and she's currently working with ASCII, and she has been working in the area of plastics as well as waste management, and currently supports us in activities related to documentation, knowledge management, and capacity building. She's the one who's instrumental, next slide, instrumental in conducting the detailed interviews, which has led to cataloging of 30 stories of women champions from water and sanitation sector. This is our volume 1. This is our way of celebrating these women who have shared their aspirations, their challenges with us, who have shared their successes with us. They have contributed to various aspects ranging from plastics to wastewater to rainwater harvesting. And with you, we would like to honor all of them. We request you, all the panelists. I know if it was an event where we were meeting face to face, we would have given you some books and asked you to cut a ribbon so we could formally launch the book. But currently we will just have to act as if you are clicking and we are launching the book. So we will proceed with launching this book. On your behalf, Devika, I request you to go to the next slide. Many of these women champions are there as participants today. And Devika's slides continue to give us trouble.
Yes, there's a minor time lag. You should be having the screen in about 5 seconds.
Okay. Thank you. That was a very slow curtain opening, just to mark that we are launching. And yes, a round of applause for all these ladies. Next slide, Devika. Devika, shall I take over the slideshow if you're having trouble? Okay, we'll try
Yes,
for some
ma'am.
time. Yeah, shall I take over?
I think so, yes.
All
It
right.
will
So
be
can you
easier to
just,
navigate.
can you stop the slideshow? Right. So this book is an ebook and can be accessed at the website which you see on the screen. It's called inkwash.in. And just as a mark of respect and as a mark of gratitude to all these ladies for spending some time with us and also supporting the sector, I'll request Devika to quickly introduce our 30 champions in the first volume to all the participants here. Devika, over to you quickly.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. I know we have most of these women leaders joining us virtually today, but it would have been absolutely great to hear their stories directly. But in the interest of time, I shall take you through a few thoughts that we had been able to capture during this process. And first up, we have the former chairperson of Narsapur Municipal Commission, Council, Ms. P. Ratnamala, who believes that change can only happen if we stand up for ourselves and take the lead. And this is absolutely true to the work that she has been able to do at Narsapur too. Here you can see her holding a can of biochar, which is a byproduct of the process that happens at the first fecal sludge treatment plant, which she helped establish in Andhra Pradesh. Next up, we have, yes, ma'am. Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Olela, who is an active member of the City Sanitation Task Force, and she champions the cause of the transgender community. She points out that they have been ostracized from the society and they have always had difficulty in accessing basic needs. Yes, beggary isn't, a dignified option, and that they deserve dignity. Next up, we have Ms. Ulka Sadarkar, who is a sanitation entrepreneur and the director of Seraplast. She rightly points out that every woman has a right to dignity. A neat and tidy toilet is a basic need, and that should just be normal. Following her, we have Ms. Kavita and Ms. Nagalakshmi. They both are self-help group members who have contributed to the operation and maintenance of community toilet at Warangal. And they believe that casteism and sexism need to be purged from our society so that women can grow. Next up, we have Ms. Srijana Bagaria. She is the co-founder of PSafe. And she rightly points out that, it's not going to be a smooth journey, but if we trust our instincts, things will definitely fall in place. Following her, we have Ms. Iti Mathur, who is a co-founder and head of engagement and partnerships at SmartLoo. And she believes that there is a need to create a systemic shift so that urban poor can have access to clean toilets, and that clean toilets should be the new norm to ensure a safe and hygienic environment for all. This is Ms. Lakshmi. She is a caretaker of Warangal city's first exclusive toilets for women, the She Toilet. And she finds her job absolutely rewarding because she believes that public sanitation service needs of women are different from that of men, and that she helps the city to meet those particular needs. Following her is the marketing head at Kamavida Enviro Engineers, Ms. Arati Krishna, who believes that there's a need to focus a lot more on the sanitation soldiers who make our lives easier. This is Ms. Venkata Lakshmi, a very dynamic female entrepreneur who runs the first desludging truck operation at Narsapur. And she succinctly puts it, gender, age, and caste should not and does not decide our worth. This is Ms. Dasri Shavani, the first female desludging operator in Warangal. And she believes that the 21st century is going to definitely see more women leaders and entrepreneurs in the sanitation sector. I would like to introduce Ms. Namita Banka, who is a sanitation entrepreneur, and has carved out a niche space for herself in an absolutely male-dominated sector. And she opines that sanitation industry is nascent and there's a lot of innovation and reinvention that has to happen to build it further. Next up, we have Ms. Bhuvana Sundari Devi, who is the site in charge of the fecal sludge treatment plant at Narsapur, who believes that the glass ceiling is indeed difficult to break. And I agree with her when she says that women can make the effort to empower one another. Following her is Dr. Shirisha Hazari, the headmistress of Zilla Parishad High School at Pochampally. She has a keen interest in promoting WASH in schools, and she believes that there is a need to invest in children as they are the change makers and are a living media. This is Ms. Satyanarayanamma, a member of the Gender Forum in Ponnapalli ward at Narsapur. She believes that women play a key role in improving sanitation in their homes and in communities, and has been actively promoting awareness campaigns for the women folk for her community. Next up, we have Ms. Maria. She's a slum resource person at Warangal, and she believes that a woman alone can transform her family, society, and country. And I agree. This is Ms. Lalita Kumari. She's a biology teacher at Shampet Government School at Warangal. And she believes that there's a need to mold our youth to ensure that our sanitation mission continues to be sustainable because they are the future. Following her, we have Ms. Kalpana Ramesh, who's an interior architect and designer. And she believes that women know and understand water and have an innate ability to overcome challenges and move forward. Therefore, there's a need to empower more women to help revive the environment. This is Ms. Aditi Agarwal, a sanitation entrepreneur. And I totally agree when she says, follow your passions, but also back it up with the required technical knowledge. Next up, we have Ms. Pratima Joshi. She is the founding partner and executive director of Shelter Associates. She opines that there's a huge dearth of architects and planners in the development sector, and we can be of immense value for our cities. It's a tremendous change that we can bring in with our imagination, information, and skills. Let me introduce Ms. Manvita Baradi, who is the founding director of Urban Management Center. And she says that while her content to work on India sanitation problems has come from her education, the tools that she uses to communicate are influenced a lot by theater. This shows how we use different skill sets to come up to for a very technical sector like the wash space. This is Dr. Shalini Sharma, who is the CEO of Sanshodhan. And she believes that if we want our children to have a clean and green environment, then responsible recycling is the need of the hour. Next up, we have Ms. Rashi Agarwal, who's the director for partnerships of Bangi Nation. And she believes that women have the ability to think with both their minds and hearts and truly engage in responsible business. And that water, sanitation, and solid waste sector is a right fit for us to create a huge impact. Let me introduce Ms. Maya Vivek and Ms. Meenal Dalmia, who are the founders of Urvi Sustainable Concepts. And I agree when they say that women and water are very similar in nature, only in their absence do we realize their importance. Next slide, please. Yes. This is Ms. Lakshmi Menon, who is the founder of Pure Living. She believes that you can either be part of the solution or the problem, and that she would rather be a part of the solution. These are women from a group called Siahi, based in Delhi, which makes upcycled paper pens. And they, from their experience, believe that women need to be financially independent so that they can stand on their own feet and move ahead in life. Following them is Ms. Nalini Shekhar, who is the co-founder of Hasiru Dala, who believes that community is our asset and the only thing that matters to us should be the community that we serve. This is Ms. Lakshmi Narayan, who's a social activist researcher, and the founder of Swachh and PKP, who believes that in order for others to believe in us, there's a need to believe in ourselves. Following her is Ms. Aditi Deodar, who is the founder of Brownleaf, and she says that intention and vision are more important than having a perfect plan in place, and that if we want to do good, people will definitely support. This is Ms. Poonam Bir Kasturi, the founder of Daily Dump, who understands that there's a need for more women in the boards of organizations to bring financial prudence, clear-headedness, and empathy into business. Last up, we have Dr. Jasmine Gogia, who's the head of CSR, Sustainability and Occupational Health at Suzlon Group. She believes that empowering communities to empower themselves innovatively is the key to sustainable rural development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Devika. Again, a round of applause for all the ladies for showing leadership from advocacy to bureaucracy to service delivery. Thank you very much for being part of our catalog, and we look forward to hearing more about the good work you're doing. Now, with that, we will start the discussions of the day. I request all the panelists to please switch on their videos. We have received several questions from our members who have registered, and we also have many doubts that we hope you will be able to clarify, and we hope you'll speak from the heart and help us in our journeys of becoming leaders in water and sanitation sectors. So the first question, and my dog is not very happy about it for some reason. The first question is, we see that there is a lot of women leadership in sectors like IT, education, engineering, health, etc. Why is it that we still don't see that kind of leadership in water and sanitation sector? Why is it that when we are talking about entrepreneurship and bringing women into water sanitation, they are typically looking at jobs which are slightly at the lower end of the value chain? Are we not able to train and think of women in higher positions, in positions of influence, rather than always thinking in terms of taking them for operations and maintenance and soap manufacturing? How do we bring that aspiration? How do we bring women into water and sanitation? That's the first question. Dr. Sridevi, shall we start with you? Take your responses and then go around the participants.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Malini. It's a great question, and it's hard to answer. So I'm being called for one of the toughest, maybe. But let me tell you, women in decision making, if you look at their representation, it has always been less than optimal. However, if you recall, most of the women, even in this water and sanitation thing, like when we started off for ODF, when I joined as Commissioner and Director of Municipal Administration, there were only 12 municipalities which were ODF. All others were still the reverse of that, full open defecation maybe. So when we saw that, we incorporated women as Swachhdoots. We had used or built on the networks, women self-help group networks, to see that the toilets are constructed. But beyond that, women, whether you need a toilet or not, where it has to be constructed, and if it is for she toilets that our Honorable Minister has given so much of a fillip to, women were not in the decision making. They were, you rightly said, women were more or less viewed as beneficiaries. So from there, the requirement was to see that whether women can actually influence the decision. So there has to be a lot of nudging that has to go in, where women can be women can be actually encouraged to take those positions. So if you look at our story that we had partnership with you, we saw that women, when they were given this new role in fecal sludge and septage management, they really did well. They from mere beneficiaries, they have actually moved on to become the decision makers. You have shown some of the success stories where they're operating the she toilet, they're actually operating this septage management plants that have been set up. So it is basically, if we are saying that women are not much in water and sanitation, I think this is a new area where the policy or people who can make a difference should create space for them and see that they are not occupying something what is as a beneficiary of that particular initiative, but who can be given in. Maybe one such would be like if you're talking about the municipal councils that are elected, having reservations for women definitely will play a part. So we need to create space for women to operate, maybe give them a pedestal so that they can show that they can really take up the decision making and they can themselves become influencers. I think that is how it has to move.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll come back to you for more questions. I just wanted to check with Ms. Kirti. Ms. Kirti, we are very curious because we keep hearing that Northeast is a matriarchal society. Women have a greater role, greater voice. We wanted to check with you that is that true? Do you find, and are there any lessons that the rest of the country can learn, take from the Northeast, or do you genuinely feel there's not much difference? What is your experience?
Um, Thank you, Andy, and good evening to all the honorable panelist members and all the others who've joined us. I think it's a very pertinent discussion, especially when it concerns the role of women and the way forward. With regards to the Northeast, I've generally noticed that the tribal societies here are much, much more community oriented, and cleanliness, hygiene comes very naturally to them. They have a very sustainable way of living. The cleanest village in Asia, the Mosinram, which is in Meghalaya, that is also because of the community. And in that, because somewhere perhaps because it's a matriarchal society, perhaps there is more attention to being clean, being hygienic, and following all sanitation protocols. However, matriarchal society in terms of the hygiene management, in terms of entrepreneurship, is still at a nascent stage, and I'm sure that such discussions and such thought-provoking ideas will push these women forward.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask Dr. Kajal. Dr. Kajal, you mentioned a very interesting program that you are initiating, Sambhav. And I would also request after you, Ms. Pamela, to also speak about it. What are some of the interesting initiatives which are being taken in your state and cities to promote equity for women in water and sanitation? So, Dr. Kajal, over to you.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. Thank you for having me. So, in my experience, what I have seen for women, particularly when we talk about these equalities, uh, particularly in this area, I feel it's more like that we have seen over the years, like the patriarchal mental setup and those masculinities that are existing in this society. So the men have largely occupied and dominated this area, right, from the previous few decades, if you can see. So slowly and slowly we see the change, but at the same time, I'll give you just one example, small example, but it can show you, like, even today how it exists and how it creates inequalities. So there was supposed to be, like, a delegation that we had to send to an international training purpose for a few days. So the person who was coordinating from the outside, from the Delhi, like those who were like taking these people who were going to be trained on this particular area in Wash. I'm not going to name anybody. I'm just going to give you an example that how it affects our things in and makes the women not having this kind of resources available. So this delegation, somehow it happened that there was one lady in the delegation and rest all were women, right? So somehow she was chosen up. And then I got to know after a few days that she did not go. And I inquired and I got to know that she was told that you should stay behind because it's so difficult to handle one lady amongst all men. So she on her own did not reach out to me, otherwise I would have motivated her to go, because it's something she should have learned and she would have gained something. But she also agreed upon this kind of thing, and this whole thing happened without my knowledge. But the point is, like, we kind of somewhere this kind of mentality exists in the system, that we feel that we are unable to provide those institutional structures, that taking a women along on the training could be seen as a botheration, right? So handling, or like maintaining and giving logistics to one woman amongst the whole group of men was kind of seen as a botheration. So I'm just giving you one example that how things affect. And then how do we advance, right? We all understand it's all networking. It's like how we network, we advance in our careers, and everything happens. So if men network with men, women network with women, mostly right here. So if we have a small people at the top, we have less opportunity to grow. So somewhere those kind of demarcations in the society and those kind of things affect our advancement and growth. So that is something, those two examples I would just like to say, that that is why I believe that the women positions are less in the leadership. The things are changing in the past few decades, and in past few years we can see, even particularly in our like IES, you can see so many women now coming forward, and we see a bigger group among civil servants as well. So that is something that is in my observation. But so recently what we did in UP is, we are doing a pilot project which is called as Sambha, which is a synchronized action plan for the marginal communities to remove the vulnerabilities, in which we have tried to identify like slum areas as the intervention side and the control side. And we are trying to bring a holistic approach in the intervention area. So what we are trying to do is, rather than working in silos, we are trying to bring a convergence and the holistic development of the slum. So whatever programs we are running through any department, particularly in the area of wash, health, nutrition, and others, like livelihoods, because it's all interrelated. It's like all are the determinants, right? So it's not like just standalone thing that if you want to improve health, you have to treat the patient, you have to see that they are getting clean water and sanitation and other stuff. So this whole thing is interrelated. So in my opinion, this has to converge, and we really need to focus upon that. So we did the baseline survey, and I'll tell you that the initial data that shows us, I can share, like it's more like we asked the women about some simple questions like, who's the usual decision maker about your own health care? And 75% says that jointly they do it. Hardly 8 to 14% said that I can make decision for my own health. That was the scene. And then we asked them about like do you have the permission to visit the market or visit the hospital? The numbers are really grim, and they just, and the kind of domestic violence and other things that we see, because this is all interrelated. The violence has increased because of this COVID pandemic, other things happening. So this data is very much revealing to us, and we thought that we should do more. So now we are trying to focus more on these areas, particularly providing them with the safe water and sanitation practices located in their homes or as much closer to their houses, safe and secure environment. So all these things we are now trying to intervene in these communities, because these are very vulnerable and the needy ones. And we will see the results after like few months, and try to assess how it has been happening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kajal. You've given us two very important leads. One is it's high time we had a network of women champions in water and sanitation. And thank you very much. I think it's a brilliant idea, and we will take this forward. Oh, God. Dr. Kajal, this has something to do with you, I think. Sorry about this.
That's okay.
Sorry about it. Thank you very much for that. And the other point, that a very strong point from your side, is that it's important to learn to assert oneself. One point that I've taken away from Dr. Sridevi's comment earlier is that it's important that we create space for women to be able to demonstrate the kind of work that they can do. May I now request Ms. Pamela and Ms. Kirti to please chip in terms of what are some of the good initiatives that you have taken up. I also remember Dr. Pamela raising a point, and in extension to what Dr. Sridevi said about women asserting themselves and how they create, and that how they should create a space not just for themselves but also for others. And sometimes that we don't usually see women doing that for other women. So some thoughts on that, Ms. Pamela and Ms. Kirti, and some good work that you're doing in water and sanitation.
Good evening, everybody. I mean, talking before, Sridevi ma'am is like writing my ACR all over again. So ma'am was my commissioner, and like for the first month of my joining as a municipal commissioner. So she has been so supportive then that it makes me nervous to speak before her. Probably I just made a few visuals, I mean a slideshow to talk about a few of the initiatives. I think your PPT also was full of Warangal examples. It was almost saturated with Warangal. Nevertheless, I would also share a little bit of initiatives that we have been taking at our end. Are my slides visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So basically, we as a woman, since I joined, I wanted to create a woman-centric environment because, like all of us rightly pointed out, when we talk about being stakeholders, yes, we are very much there as stakeholders in every success or failure of any initiative that government or people take. But when we talk about being decision makers, I think all of us have to question whether we are decision makers or not. So when we talk about water and sanitation, talking about sanitation first, sanitation is like saturated with women at the bottom of the pyramid. You will see most sweepers, cleaners, any sanitation worker, mostly it's like 70-30. 70% will be women, sanitation workers, and 30% in any ULB, if you say, will be men. But those 30%, there is a clear hierarchy, especially in Warangal, I see. We call them a sanitation worker. Above them, there will be a Jawan, and above them, there will be a sanitary inspector. So out of the 20 sanitary inspectors that I have, none of them is a woman. Out of all the Jawans that I have, only 2 are women. And out of all the sanitary workers that I have, 70% are women. So we saturate the bottom of the pyramid, but nowhere we are decision makers. So right from the day one, that has been my observation. And I couldn't bring in like strong change because that was not sustainable, but I had been trying to push through subtle changes as in where I could chip in. So one of those examples is wherever there was a break during work, so men used to go out, chit chat, catch a cup of coffee, and rejuvenate themselves and come back. But women, we would never see. Women would enter from one room to another, like they would network between themselves inside a room. So I created a small park called Vanita Vanam. Vanita in Telugu means lady. So Vanita Vanam is a small park. This used to be a dump yard, informal dump yard in our corporation head office. Now we created a park out of it to help them have a better environment to brainstorm their ideas. And some of the on-the-face advocacy campaigns. For example, it is very easy for any of us to talk about periods, menstrual hygiene in third person. For example, referring to some other woman, or in general, society should be so and so, or they should create such and such environment for women. But when it comes to us, talking about the stain or having missed a pad, putting a pad in a purse is something which makes us all feel shy. We can't talk about it. Or searching for a toilet if we are on the field, just searching for a toilet to relieve ourselves is also very awkward. We would be like hush hush with our personal staff. Where is the toilet? Please kindly let us know. So subtly but strongly, we have been trying to push on the face advocacy. So this is one she toilet. It was the first of its kind she toilet when Madam was CDMA, Sridevi Ma'am was CDMA. So we had this she toilet in Warangal. So we just got this painted. Why do sanitary pads tell that whisper? No, it's not something to be whispered. It is a natural, natural phenomena. It is not to be whispered. So we have come up with Chelly sanitary pads, which are 100% organic. It is manufactured by our self-help groups. So now through this she toilet, we are using the space for marketing them. We are trying to provide them forward linkage, as well as trying to give a message loud and clear that menstrual hygiene matters. It is not something to be whispered. It is something to be said aloud loud. You already spoke about our initiatives in, bringing the third gender as well on board. So this is Laila, you can see right behind me. So we had intense discussions with the entire team, especially in COVID, we could find time and we knew that they were in distress. So while reaching out to them, when they said that, give us any sort of employment. So we were thinking what? And they were like, give us public toilets to clean. And it was like, it was relieving that this is what we could do, but it was also very disheartening that, is this the least that they expect from us? So, this is the basic expectation the third gender community has, that they will not be even provided with a community toilet or public toilet for maintenance. So we came up with a pilot. We have been giving them public toilets and community toilets for maintenance, and they have been doing a really wonderful job, and societal acceptance is also good. So this is another example. In Warangal, we need a labor-intensive workforce to drive away many initiatives that we are taking. But regular staff will not be sufficient. So as and when we need labor, we engage ad hoc labor. But as a conscious decision, we have, through our City Livelihood Center, we have been trying to push women-led slum-level federations, TLFs and SHGs to take up any odd kind of jobs. So this is again one public toilet maintenance that we have handed over to a women-led SHG. The same fecal sludge treatment operator, the A lady. So she was the first to take such an initiative. And this is our DRCC center, and the women workforce who lead it, dry resource collection center. So basically they go from household to household, encouraging women in the households to go for waste segregation in the local language, and they themselves run the DRCC center, segregate the waste, and that also gives a lot of employment to many SHGs. It also ensures that the waste is adequately recycled. Here you can see Rani Rudrama Devi is an icon in Warangal in the Kakatiya dynasty. So you can see one Rani Rudrama Devi on the top and one Rudrama Devi on the bottom with a broom, because see, at night 10:30, 11, she's doing the regular sweeper's job with so much of conviction. Like she was unaware when I clicked it. That's why the photo is quite hazy. But we have to question ourselves: are we providing a safe environment for women to take up the same shifts, the same timings that we can very safely allot to men? So we have to question ourselves and ensure that we create a good environment for us. This is our women workforce right now. We have handed them over with 2 sets of uniforms. What we generally observed is women are so occupied with work at home as well as in their workplace that when they go home, they just remove the aprons, the sanitary aprons that they wear, but they never change into fresh set of clothes or sari. But while doing the sanitation it's a tough task, so they get dirty. So I thought it will be a very good idea to give them uniforms. When I asked in the past also, they have been given uniforms, but they were so bland that they didn't want to wear it. So we asked them what is their favorite color. So many of them said purple. So we came up with this combination, and through handlooms department, we purchased new saris for them, and also we got 2 sets of uniforms for men as well. So when men said they wanted hats, not caps, because in summer they want caps. So I was unsure whether women will also want caps, but they said very strongly to me that what are you giving men? So I said between a cap and a hat, men have asked me for caps. So they said whatever you're giving men, give us the same. If you are giving them cap, give us caps. If you are giving them hats, give us hats. So finally we settled in for hats, and they love the uniform so much that they wear it to work without fail. So again, this is some kind of show off that the municipal commissioner is trying to do, because when we talk about door-to-door collection, I mean, what happens is people here are strange. They say that when the Swachh Auto goes for a door-to-door collection, they will not come out of their house with their dustbin. It is a sanitary worker who has to knock on their door, take the dustbin out and deposit it in the Swachh Auto, which was creating us a lot of cost overheads, and also it was bringing down on our efficiency. So what I'm trying to drive through is our vehicle goes at sharp 7 to each household every morning. So it's just a 2-minute effort to keep our waste segregated and hand it over. So when we tried to push that point through, many people were like, we are so educated, we don't handle our own dustbin. So educated people generate garbage, but they are not supposed to handle their own dustbin. So as a part of advocacy campaign, what we have been trying to do in municipalities, we have been trying to set examples ourselves. For example, like me in the capacity of a commissioner, our HODs, our every sort of officer, we have been trying to put one picture in the press talking about, I mean, handing over. It's a very small thing, but I didn't know it would create such a big impact. I mean, just the photo circulated on WhatsApp for the sake of it, but next day it came in the press. That means that whatever women do, other than their unofficial capacity, is being watched upon. So that gives a strong signal. So talking about entrepreneurship and employment opportunities, I think financial independence is the backbone of women empowerment. Without financial independence, we can never ever sort of imagine women being empowered, because every time they question taboo, status quo, they are asked, what are you bringing onto the table, especially in terms of finance. So we have opened up a city livelihood center kiosk right in our corporation itself. We sell women manufactured, SHG manufactured products there, like our sanitary pads, Chelly sanitary pads. Chelly in Telugu means sister. So basically, like pushing the point to that we are your sisters. And during COVID, they also manufactured around 2 lakh masks. So we distributed 2 masks per household, reusable cloth masks. So our women SHGs manufactured these 2 lakh masks as well. And like you already said, we used to provide them with cooked meals because they could have a comfortable work hour. But at the same time, whatever cooked meals we provided, that was also being cooked by women. So that was also one way of providing them with some employment opportunity. I mean, all initiatives, whatever we take, has to be across the social strata and economic strata. So if as officials we try to push for women-centric space, we also have to include, like Sridevi Madam rightly said, talking about the municipal council, it plays a great role. So we also have to push in our women corporators. I had attended 2-3 councils by March 8th, and I observed that many women do not come to council, but they instead send in their husbands or brothers. I was like really shocked. So Shri ma'am is smiling. So I mean, this is a common phenomenon. So when I asked, why are you not coming? The answer was very shocking. The brother or the husband would very casually say that, madam, this time the seat was reserved for a woman. So the councillor seat, she doesn't know anything. So we fill in. If this 5 years, if it goes away, next time it will come to us. You look look at the sense of entitlement that a man has. I was shocked. I said, okay, if she doesn't know, is it not a moral obligation to teach her? What if next term also is reserved for her? And wait and watch, the world will be reserved for her one day. Wait and watch. So it gave such a, it had such a ripple that I refused to talk to this proxy counselors. I could refuse to take any letters from them, entertain them inside my chamber. And suddenly and gradually I could see increased number. And I said, at least I have a right to see all of your faces once in my lifetime. So I invited all the counselors on March 8th, that is International Women's Day, saying that we have a small get-together, informal get-together. There would be no man in the room. You and I will speak in person. And we had a 4-hour intense discussion. I thought it would be like some half-an-hour initiative, but we had a 4-hour intense discussion on many, many things. Home, office. They were very curious about how my life, my family life, my kid, and everything. So we broke the ice on many informal grounds, and I could see the immediate impact, the immediate harshness, rivalry that so-called politicians versus officers have generally in the field, and the softened attitude and their increased presence. You can see one woman in the burqa. So she was always represented by her father-in-law. Even her husband was not allowed to come on field. So after that time, whenever I go to field, she accompanies her father-in-law. So I think these kind of subtle changes, I think any man would not be able to take notice, first of all. And even if they take notice, they wouldn't be bothered to change. I think women as leaders have that acumen to notice such kind of subtle things which can bring in subtle but strong changes.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, not at all. But I think a very powerful message that has come is that leadership by example. I think that is a key message that I'm taking away from you. Also, I think it's important point that made by you is how gender inclusive language can potentially lead to gender inclusive intentions. For example, is it time to rename sanitary jawans? Is it time to rename linemen? Probably yes, so that we have more openness and people coming in. At this point, I'm going to now move to Deepti and Priya with very specific questions. Deepti, the question to you is, a lot of discussion around here has been on livelihoods as a way of bringing in empowerment. So what is your view on it? What is your experience and what is your advice? Followed by question to Priya. That Priya, you made a very interesting point during one of our conversations that enough of talking about how women are facing issues. It's time to capitalize and then get the corporates to understand and invest in women empowerment. So I'll start with Deepti. Deepti, some thoughts from you, and then we'll move to Priya.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Malini. Good evening, ma'am. Sridevi, ma'am. Hi, Pamela. Hi, everybody else. So, as you're aware, PHUB is a Government of Telangana initiative for women entrepreneurs. And we work with women entrepreneurs across socio-economic strata. So as part of a conversation, one of the first things that we always encountered, and I'll be very brief in this, is that a lot of times when people came to VHub, they always thought that they always came with a mindset of we want to give back and so we want to help VHub. So first thing we actually told them is please do not confuse empowerment with entrepreneurship. They're completely different narratives. So that is the first thing that we started having a conversation on. The second thing is that as we were working on entrepreneurship across socioeconomic strata, we started a conversation with SERP and Sridevi ma'am as well for MEPA. And one of the things that we noticed was that there is a lot of women who are actually currently doing livelihoods, but they had a huge potential to actually scale into becoming entrepreneurs. So we actually had a conversation with Sridevi ma'am, and we actually were discussing on how we can create more entrepreneurs in the MEPMA space, get more SHG women into becoming entrepreneurs. And as part of that, we were successful, so to speak, to find 30 women from about 3,500 rural entrepreneurs. Like all these women came to our boot camps. There were 3,500 women who came to our boot camps. But unfortunately, we thought that, when 3,500 women are there in a boot camp, and they all call themselves as entrepreneurs, they're all from the SHG groups, they're all from the skilled space, so to speak. They were all skilled by various initiatives of the government. We only found 30 women who actually understood what entrepreneurship is. So we started working a lot on that. As we were doing that, we realized we are doing in every sector. We are working in the food processing space, we are working in the agri space, we are working in every other space. How do we then talk about wash? Which is when I think Malini, our conversation started. So now we are primarily focusing on bringing about a dignity, as Pamela also mentioned. Unless women are economically enabled, there is no concept of empowerment. So being a economically enabled person or a stakeholder in the family equation is when the woman is truly empowered. That is the number one. Second thing is for the wash sector as well. When we started the conversation with Malini, so Malini and I actually started off in different areas because Malini was speaking about wash and I was speaking about entrepreneurship. And then one day Malini told me that the difference between every entrepreneur and a wash entrepreneur is the sense of dignity and a pride that a wash entrepreneur needs to be instilled with. So that is something that we are starting to work with you, work with ASCII and also the various ULBs on the entrepreneurship in the wash space. So I'll start on that. So coming, that is something that we are already doing. And last year we found 3,500 women and 30 entrepreneurs. And this year we only received about 450 applications. And one of the good things that we noticed is that we found about 82 entrepreneurs out of 450 rural women who applied to us. So I think now finally we are able to briefly get our message that, entrepreneurship is a little bit different from, just being skilled or doing some kind of a business activity in the free time. So that is something that we've been able to bring about. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipti. We also spoke about how instilling this sense of business into the heads is very important. One is to be aspirational to be an entrepreneur, but actually making it run and make money is another thing. And that's where Priya comes in. She's our money lady. She knows how to get corporates to loosen their purse strings. Priya, over to you. What are your thoughts?
Thank you. Firstly, I must say that, this entire session has been delightful and inspirational, right? Wonderful to hear about, all of the stories of change, the experiences, and Pamela, I'm sure that Dr. Sridevi is very, very proud of you. I know I am. So this has been great. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we do at Samhita and also sort of where we've seen success. So Samhita is 10 years old. I started it with support from one of the Infosys co-founders. We do two things. We work extensively with companies and convince them and cajole them and blackmail them into supporting a variety of initiatives and definitely wash. And the second thing that we're doing is we are co-creating multi-stakeholder platforms where we bring together philanthropists, government, corporates, social entrepreneurs, nonprofits, to really get them to work at scale and work in close collaboration with each other. And we've seen some sort of, terrific success. So here's what I've broadly learned, right? One is that, obviously, as women, and particularly when you think of wash, and then when you think of gender, you have all kinds of barriers. So I have just learned to ignore the barriers. Because if I ignore the barriers, then I'm only looking at possibilities. Broadly, when I talk to companies, I do one of two things. Either I hone down on the diversity and inclusion agenda, and then, because they have very few projects that ever qualify. And so make sure that, we're really capitalizing on the fact that they have both international pressure as well as domestic pressure to support all kinds of women issues. And that's where we try and focus most of our attention. I find that, very often it's not like there is resistance. There is just a blind spot. Most corporate decision makers don't even think of projects through the lens of gender. So then we do one of two things, right? One is either we sort of proactively present only gender-based initiatives. And if we face resistance, then we just call it a sanitation worker program, which they approve. And then invariably we'll push 80% women into it, right? So either you do it consciously or you do it unconsciously. And we've seen sort of two kinds of experiences. So for example, one of our corporates, large multinational, had been focusing on WASH and had been focusing on women's empowerment and never thought that the two of them actually come together. And 5 years after Swachh Bharat, we went to them and we said, look, all of your peers are focused on schools, on communities, but who's looking at women in the workforce who don't have access to sanitation facilities? So their mantra is basically, we create exceptional workplaces. And we went to them and we said, what about women, who work in bazaars or who sell fish and sell flowers and sell vegetables? I mean, don't they deserve exceptional workspaces? We realized they'd never thought about it. And so suddenly from, something that they had thought about as two separate initiatives came a very strong initiative where they started creating sanitation facilities and integrated sanitation facilities for women in the workplaces. Now this program got picked up by a couple of their own employees, and their own employees said, we will try and celebrate a day where we will block sanitation facilities for all men and only open it for women in our office. And we just want to see how men experience the complete absence of sanitation, right? So what was amazing is just I think once you present an idea, women tend to take them on sort of very, very quickly and, kind of sort of run with it. The second quick example I want to give is we were working with another corporate, again, on projects looking at sanitation workers, and they said, we don't want to have gender as an issue. But as soon as we started demonstrating success, they went from, gender sounds too complicated to suddenly seeing these really, really positive stories of change where they've now become a gender champion. So broadly, I think, two learnings. One is just push the gender agenda, right? Continue to do it, incorporate it into everything that you do. It's part of my first slide has pictures of women. My impact stories has, not just outcomes on sanitation, but additional outcomes on what it means for gender. And the more you talk about it, you realize that just subconsciously, unconsciously, it becomes part of the narrative. And before you know it, they are actually becoming stronger champions than we are. And then the second is, we just make sure that a disproportionate number of projects that we present are all focused on gender. So yeah, I mean, those were the two sort of, successes that we've seen. And suddenly we've just set up a 50 crore revolving fund actually to help 100,000 women and men find jobs and livelihood opportunities. These are individuals affected by COVID. And initially we were worried because we thought, we'll get to maybe about 30% women. The kind of portfolio we're seeing right now is 70 to 80% women, right? Which means funders are championing women, nonprofit partners are able to reach women, corporates are championing women. And so suddenly I now have a fund which seems very much like a women fund, and we are now struggling to find some men to also support. And I think this has just come from the fact that we've just decided that everything we do will be about gender from now on.
Thank you, Priya, for setting such a positive tone. So essentially what we are speaking about is having a narrative which is very aspirational for women. And the other big takeaway for me is that we need to integrate gender in everything and not have it as a separate chapter at the end of the book. An interesting note is that the recent documents of Government of India also, wherever there was earlier his or her, has now replaced the his and it has only her there. So which is like, I think there are also some women working behind the scenes, I hope. With that, now I'm going to pull in Dr. Kajal and Ms. Kirti again into the conversation. Of course, Dr. Kajal has an anecdote to share with us and we can't let go of that. So Dr. Kajal, over to you. And Ms. Kirti, some thoughts on what are some of the initiatives you have taken in your, because there's so many awards you have received. We just want to know a little bit more about that. Dr. Kajal, over to you.
Thank you. So as Ms. Pamela was talking about this menstrual hygiene project, so this is something that I've also done, and it reminded me, like somebody has asked a question in the chat, like how the voices can be heard, right? It's not just the voice of the women. Sometimes, like even for us in the system, it's really hard to make these things, being heard. So I'll give you just one example that I working as a district magistrate in one of the Bundelkhand areas. We started the low cost sanitary napkin unit, so that that area is very poor. So we linked it with their, like, as what Miss Pamela has done, like the livelihood generation, created those self-help groups, and this was done particularly in one district with 2 machines, a very small project. So when I like coming from a like a gynae background, being a doctor, so I always felt like this is very important for them. So connecting both health and hygiene with the livelihood was very good. So after that, when I was transferred back to the health department, so it was like I just thought that this is going to die. How we can make it sustainable, like how it can be like linked forward. So there's it's always like, we all understand that the initial 2 years of your after menarche, when your menstruation starts, so women, you develop those habits, like are you going to use the cloth, or like what they're doing. So that's very, very important time when you can really put and inculcate those habits of using something hygienic, right? So we brought a policy which I was very much keen to push, that we should provide free of cost sanitary napkins to the school going girls in that age group, so that they inculcate that habit, and it becomes like like a sustainable initiative, because otherwise it's like an individual thing and it will die off. So it was very funny that my principal secretary that time, very, very fine gentleman, very supportive. So I told him about this initiative, and he was like, yeah, let's see. So there was a meeting, all men sitting there. So what I did, I just brought all the sanitary napkin, that product, I brought it in front of them, I put it in front of their desk, and that meeting just took 10 minutes. They didn't ask much, and they said, let's do it. So this is something it was like, you see, sometimes that helps, like the way you put your thing, you frame the stuff, and the policy came out after a few months. We prepared the cabinet note and it was passed, and in the state of UP has now the policy in place that for first 2 years in that public sector schools, we are providing those sanitary napkins free of cost for 2 years to the school going girls, so that they do not drop out, and that thing has happened. We also had this replication of this 40 in 40 other districts of this low cost sanitary napkin unit, production unit, and we created those forward linkages with the Nari Niketans, jails, and other areas, also under the health department of Janani Shishu Suraksha Karyakram and this JSY scheme, where you have to purchase these sanitary napkins for women. So these forward linkages were created. This policy has been put into place, so these kind of initiatives can keep going. So I believe that is one of the example of like setting, like letting people know of your voice and making something sustainable in the long run. So that's something I felt that should be shared with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Kirti, over to you.
Yeah, so with regards to the Northeast and I think the general narrative, somewhere women over the course of generations have somewhere been, of course, left behind. And there's a general sense of, can we go forward in this? I think women empowerment or women leadership, it's not the world that's going to be ready for it. It's just the woman that needs to feel that I am ready for it. So it's an internal dialogue that she needs to overcome. There's no stage that's being set and said, all right, from now on, you're empowered. It's something that has to come from within. So I was posted as the first lady collector of my district, which is an aspirational district as well. And it started from that very base that we got to break a lot of hitherto thought of preconceived notions. And when I had entered my district, it was a time of elections. And we started out with saying, why can't women exercise their votes? So usually the understanding is that the male comes and votes for the women, and the participation is also quite less. So we try to include them in many, many ways. Of course, starting with Mahila Panchayat and the entire movement we pushed forward, the women workers from the government, Anganwadi, Asha, these ladies kept going and saying, you have to cast your vote. So we, of course, the sanitary napkin is a big way to break the discomfort. It's a good way to also catch attention of men and women equally, to put a question saying, are we wrong in our thought process somewhere? So we branded our sanitary pads, which were locally made through our SHG ladies, which itself was a challenge. It started during my time after a lot of haggling and asking, why can't you? And that's something I'm actually proud of, is that my district is a minority majority district, and they were not comfortable with the idea of production of sanitary napkins. And with a lot of cajoling and a lot of encouraging them, you just try, I promise you it won't be bad. And then slowly they started using it. They said initially that nobody will buy it, and today they're very profitable and they've opened 3 other branches. So those we bought, we branded them with our election date, and we distributed them to these burqa clad women in a very public program. So the entire pictures filled with burqa clad women holding the sanitary pads to say that we are not shy about this anymore. There's nothing wrong. I had also one of those times when I couldn't go to office, and somebody had asked, why aren't you in office? It's a working day or something. I said, I have my period, I'm in extreme pain, and it's okay to take rest for the day. So, the message really went wide and long. And that brought in a lot of teachers, a lot of women who are working, saying, thank you, madam, for making it normal, for making it a part of the normal conversation. You didn't hesitate to say, oh, well, I had fever or something. You really brought forth the conversation, and that really helped too. So our campaign also was started on the idea, we called it the Bhoni campaign. Bhoni is a younger sister in Assamese. The idea is that the younger sister is demanding a better world, and hence she's asking for votes to be cast, and votes to be cast with well thought out decisions. So she's tying also Rakhi with 4 knots on it. So those 4, that's the date of the election date, so 4th April. So it was a way of also reminding that this election is being driven by women. So the idea that ultimately women somewhere tend to hesitate in taking decisions because also the resource management, which is the financial independence, that is usually something that they're not told that they can do. A lot of times they feel, can we do it, even though they are the ones who are managing the entire household expenses. Somehow the society says, oh, it's the the one who wears the bossy pants, who gets the money, they're the only leaders. But women actually end up saving that single penny and convert it into 10 rupees, 100 rupees, and run the entire house, and also support the children and their education. So we worked for majorly the SHG movement in terms of the toilet construction through the ODF Swachh Bharat program that had been successful. A challenge that we were facing in our villages when we spoke to public was that wahan pe bijli nahi hai. There's no electricity there, and in the night times it's we're not comfortable going, snakes can be coming. So we thought of a solution through the solar assembling unit. So this is again actually run by these very old ladies who do soldering, electrification. So we tied up with IIT Bombay and we started making our own solar lamps, which are very tiny, easy to carry. And these are again carried by women, and they use it to, go to the toilet, and then, use it for their hygiene and everything. So the fact that these solar lamps are actually made by women themselves, they're assembled, they're sold. Today now they're actually turnover is in terms of 1.2 crore, because they've expanded further. The entire district has sort of started asking for these solar lamps, and their business has actually taken over. With that came a lot of financial independence. They are the ones now who are also holding men accountable. So those who are regular drunkards in the society, these ladies are actually having, they call it the demon banishing event. And they have an intervention with these men, and then they say, we will not entertain. So earlier, when a woman used to feel that I don't have a voice because there's money in her hands, she feels she has a voice. So she's also taking control of the societal evils that may or may not directly affect her, but she feels responsible. And that's what a mother does. That's what a female does. That's what a lady does. She nurtures, and she always ensures that it's not just her family. Her intention is to always care and make the society better. Another like the tale that Pamela had mentioned, majority district. So none of the women in burqas would ever turn up for any meeting. to a point where I refused to listen to any representative. I used to send them out on an insistence. The argument was, Madam, how can they take decisions? And I used to say, if your collector, who's a lady, is taking decisions for your district, then I'm sure that lady who's running your GP president can also take decisions. That, of course, they started attending the meetings. But what I was really touched with, so initially they used to come with fully faces covered in the burqas, but over the course of meetings, they slowly felt empowered looking at other women talk, and they slowly started, removing the veil to say, Madam, I want you to see my face. I want you to know that this is my idea. This is my decision that I'm taking for my Gram Panchayat. So that was again a very strong move. And it basically was possible by just saying, why not try it? There's nothing to lose. A lot of these barriers are invisible. They're also a lot of the times in our minds, like women somewhere historically have been subjugated. So perhaps they hesitate to go forward. So you were asked a pertinent question of why not more women entrepreneurs in wash. The idea of garbage to gold also was a very nascent idea. And as always, the pie is greatly consumed by the men. So to even think that perhaps we can do and then open up is something that we've tried. We firstly started with assigning some land pattas to these cleaners. So even as with any place, most of our cleaners and sweepers were women, and their leaders were men. So we ensured that the land pattas were given to the women who are actually our sweepers. And that was the biggest empowered move that we could have given, because after that, they really took charge, and the toilets and everything, they owned up as a movement. It's not just a hush hush subject of go to the toilet, but it's a subject of pride, and it's a subject of dignity. And another thing that we really tried, and it was very effective, was every Sunday I used to take my MLAs, MPs, and go on the streets and clean the roads ourselves. And that also broke the myth that these women are they're out of the society, they don't have respect, or they don't have dignity. That was a major move in including them. So morning 6 a.m. they used to be ready, and to a point now where it used to be a big picnic event. The sweepers also used to look forward, oh, Sunday we have special program, we have a special party. So there's a lot of dignity. And they said, we never spoke to an MP directly. Now thanks to you, we are telling him our problems, we're telling you DC our problems. You are picking plastic in front of us, so that also helped reduce garbage collection, in the sense that just people throwing random garbage on the streets, somewhere a certain sense of responsibility also grew. The girl students also went forward and went back home saying that we shall not litter our streets. So that was something that was very successful. So these women, through which we connected the sanitation to the land pattas, and this movement went forward during COVID. So these same ladies came back and said, you had supported us so much. Now in a pandemic, when there's of course supply logistic problems to reach all the way to the Northeast, it was a difficult thing. So these SHGs took upon themselves to stitch PPE kits. And they just said, ma'am, if you can get some shops to open, and this is during lockdown, if you can get some shops to open, just give us the material, we will stitch and give it to our doctors, our Asha Didis, our people who are working. So initially, when we had like a little bit of shortage of PPEs, these SHGs, again, these women SHGs who stepped forward and they started stitching these PPE kits, and then, not just masks, but actual kits, from shoe covers to head covers, and who've never seen it earlier. We, Googled images and we just sent them over WhatsApp, and they really took it into a whole other movement. Then they started tinkering with sanitizers, with alcohol preparation. So the first step was always, why not do it? What is the one that's holding you back? The same movement then we took forward to, because hygiene is very much connected to health. Women generally are low in iron for various reasons of nutrition, and anemia makes you feel you're weak physically. Hence, it makes you feel perhaps you're the weaker sex, which is not true. It's a temporary stage that has been created because somewhere first let the men eat, then the woman will eat. So in tea garden areas, we had this massive movement that it's the woman who'll first eat, not the men. And just this, why not? Like there's nothing written in the, rules or in Veda or in constitution. So let the women eat first. And whatever is left, then the rest of the men will share. That really took forward. And it brought in like actual results in terms of women, getting better from anemia and also having healthier babies. So that sort of really connected. So when we think of wash, we think only toilet or Swachh Bharat or Nirmal Bharat or just the construction of ODF or whatever. It's a whole other movement. And when you bring in a woman, because of her just very nature to be always nurturing, she's mother nature in that sense, it covers the entire society, it covers the entire nation. One last thing before I wind up. So we also started this solid liquid resource management. So of course, ward-wise collections at the source with segregated waste, then secondary stage of segregation, and tertiary stage where we sell the recyclable material. We have started this in under Swachh Sundar Silcha. Silcha is the headquarter of Kachar district, and that's predominantly being run by women. My accountants are women, my project managers are women, and it has really brought in a lot of livelihoods to hitherto people who used to just come to DC office saying, please give us some money, we can't run the house, my husband is eternally drunk. Those are the women we tapped in saying, do you want to work? Not just ask for some donation, but you want to work. And they stepped in and they took it upon it, and they really feel that it's their project. So tomorrow, I'm very confident that even when I'm not there, I'm transferred out, the project will move forward because they've really owned it up. And it's brought in much, much more cleanliness to the town when it was not there earlier. So the women of, say perhaps, the educated class, the others have also started supporting through various means and through donations. So it's become a very strong women movement. And ultimately, we just need to realize that it's not a journey where you hit a milestone and then you feel you're empowered. It starts now, it starts today, it starts in your mind. When you overcome your underconfidence, your fear, which is a phantom fear, it is not real. When you overcome that, your voice is enough and you can do anything.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such brilliant practical examples for everyone to take away and learn from. And just to continue on a little bit of anecdotes that Dr. Kajal has started off. I was just sharing this with Dr. Sridevi and many of you also earlier, that I was working in a particular city. I don't want to name the city, where there's a women chairperson. So the first year when we started interacting with the city, we went to the chairperson's office. There was only one chair and husband was sitting on it. She was nowhere in the sight. Second year we went, there was a big chair and a small chair. The small chair was what she occupied, big chair is what he occupied. Third year we went, there was only big chair and there was only her. He was nowhere inside. So I think there's, somewhere once you get a woman used to, and she starts understanding her own abilities and power can be addictive, no doubt about that. So I think those were some of the learnings. The other thing that I want now to bring forward to all the participants, and I would like each one of you to please respond to this, is in terms of what next. So we are talking in terms of, as women in this seat of, so to say, seat of power, each one of you in your own way. What are those policy level changes, and what are the institutional structures or institutional decision-making related changes that we need to make? Because I remember personally, there was a particular person who was involved in making decisions for women and health. And he, as a doctor, told me that we are doing a great work in our state, and we have ensured that we are going to give 6 pads per month per child, to take care of a menstrual need. So we said, no, 6 is not enough. He looked at me and said, no, 6 is enough. So I said, excuse me. So how do we, what are the kind of policy level changes we need? How do we bring women into making these policies? What institutional structures do we need in order to ensure that some of the good things that we heard of today are sustained, and then further better things can also be taken forward? Dr. Sridevi, can I put you on the spot and start with you on this?
Sure, Dr. Malini, thank you very much. In fact, while listening to all the youngsters, it's so nostalgic, because I remember when after the 73rd amendment as a SDM, I conducted my first Gram Panchayat elections. And this was the issue, the same thing, saying that women sarpanches would never be visible. Since then, I had made it a point in every posting of mine, I wouldn't speak to anyone proxy, just like what Pamela just mentioned. If there were men, I would just ask them to leave. And I would speak to the person who was actually elected, and I could really see a lot of change that had happened. One example I would like to quote, and then I would like to provide answer to this. While in ICRISAT, I had an opportunity to make an assessment of women's involvement in watershed development. And I found that wherever women were actually actively participating and taking decisions and going ahead with implementation of the whole thing, her work, which was normally in that context, it was like keeping the cattle at home and taking care of them. It was always like the work was swapped, not by any gender, but it was only by maybe a labor substitution. So some other women came in and started working for this women, spending time in decision making. That means that unless a woman is able to hire somebody to do her chores, she will not be relieved of the responsibility that she normally does, and she has to be somewhere else. So that is where I said that when we are talking about this, we need to provide the space where women are able to make their own decisions where they want to be. And if they have to make these decisions, it's hard. They cannot just leave their responsibilities and go and take up other responsibilities. What we were talking about, Dipti also would be in, where in MEPMA we looked at women were actually saving a lot of money and they were having a corpus, but they were not looking into entrepreneurship at all. They were looking at actually a livelihood option. And for two decades, we have been continuing on this, talking about women empowerment, and we are only talking about livelihoods for them. But this is not what is going to empower them. We need to look at how are they going to become job creators, or they are creating jobs for others. That's the definition of entrepreneur, not livelihood per se. So we used to have a lot of chats and discussions, and Deepthi came up with this boot camp, and it really clicked well, where initially maybe 30, but that was a beginning to go ahead and look at giving women space as an entrepreneur rather than actually making a livelihood out of their corpus that they have accrued through savings. So this is one thing which I felt was basically in one village in Mehboob district later, where I became a collector of Mehboob. This case study was where women were running a restaurant, they were running a milk chilling center, they were running a supermarket, and at their jobs at home of taking care of the cattle was done by either they have to go back and do it, or they have to, it's a work overload, or somebody else labor has to do it. So are we creating a situation where women can take a choice or make a choice and be where they want to be? I think that is where we need to look at how are we going to provide this. For example, when we talked about reservations, we are giving 50% reservation to women that is required under the 74th amendment, constitutional amendment in municipal areas. And when the reservations are given, just because the reservation is woman, the person, the aspirant's wife, sister, brother, mother is going to contest election. So this is not going to work. So it has to be paired with training, capacity building, and exposure. I think if you do not do this, it's not really going to click. You're going to be running in circles. When I think about 1995, when I was conducted the Sarpanch's election, now Pamela talking about it, it's almost like 2.5 decades, and we are still talking about this because we have not moved from tokenism to actually putting women in space. So if you're talking about water and sanitation, it's a new area. Basically, if you look at one example I can talk about, when we decided that we will go plastic free. So I asked some of the, as a commissioner and director of municipal administration, I asked some of the environmental engineers whether they would like to take this challenge and make a municipality total plastic free. And to tell you, there was one girl, Shushruta was her name. She came up in Narsingi municipality and took it as a challenge and made that in 30 days, she almost got it plastic free. In fact, supported those people who supported her were the Resident Welfare Association headed by women. I saw there women were so passionately involved in protecting their lakes. They were so very involved in protecting Gandipet, because this particular thing comes with the drinking water source for the city. Earlier one, Gandipet is located. So when women are passionate about doing something, definitely they bring in empathy in the administration as well as efficiency. So we need to actually capitalize on that and provide a policy framework where women can actually take that space. So in the beginning, when I said that we need to provide space, this is what I meant. We need to have a framework where women legitimately can actually exercise their choice and be there. And definitely this is going to be taking them forward.
Thank you, Dr. Sridevi. It's an open floor. Any of the other panelists would like to policy and institutional change that we need, or better implementation of existing policies. Your thoughts on that?
I would like to give one more example. Like when I was working with NHM, so at that time NHM was like, we didn't have an HR policy, and as you know, mostly we have these contractual positions for 1 year, which gets extended every year, but people have 1 year contractual position in place. So there was no policy. So people start, these ladies who were working, when they had this maternity leave issues coming up, I was there, and it was really hard to actually convince the senior people, especially who are men, to say that the and if they're only for 6 months, then what's the benefit to us? And we made this logical argument that these people are working for last so many years, and just because the policy is not in place, they are not able to advance their career. So as a woman, I believe this is a very important lesson that we really need to, that's the kind of quote unquote lean in for other women. Whenever you have a chance, and if we are in that position where we can help other women, then we should, and we should be doing that as much as possible, whether it is creating workplace flexibility hours for them, whether it is providing them with these kind of policy issues, where so that their progress is not having any setback. Number one. And number two, I would say that it's equally important to involve men in these programs, because they're very important. It's a WhatsApp gyan, but I always like it to say, we are going to empower women, but who's going to handle these empowered women unless we create empowerment in men? So that's something I always share with my colleagues and everybody, and I tell them that you just can't keep on focusing on women and saying we are empowering women, because we need to have a society which is that ecosystem is created where this is acceptable, and we can have that kind of advancement in place. And of course, as I said, policy making, as somebody rightly said, it should not be just the last paragraph in any policy about gender. That should not be it. We should have that gender lens while we are drafting any policy, any department, and we should be able to see what are going to be the repercussions, not just from the perspective of women but men as well. That's it. Key takeaways from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kajal. And I must inform you that there were many men who have taken objection to having this all women panel, and they're all itching to be part of this panel. And it was a conscious decision to keep each and every man out of it, at least for the first webinar, maybe next webinar. But yes, thank you so much for your points. Pamela.
In terms of policy, I'd like to add a bit. So, generally the consensus, especially from the opposing voices that say that why do we need reservations for women? Anyways, the men are coming and doing this work for them. Affirmative action has always, throughout history, helped people, so-called, who were sort of left behind to come forward. Irrespective of all kinds of pros and cons, affirmative actions have only helped women come forward. So that should be taken, further. There are discussions to take it to the parliament as well, and it should be taken forward. A small example I'd like to add here. There was this reluctant GP Panchayat president, who was a lady, and that was also because only there was women reservation. She was forced to take that, and with our insistence, she slowly kept coming, and then she started liking the work, and then she realized this is perhaps something that is interesting to do, is fun to do. And we had given her one defunct PHE plant, and we said that we're not able to run it because government has sort of exhausted the funds because for the diesel expenditure to run the motor to pump the water. And with a lot of hesitation, with a lot of timidness, she said, can I do it? And we encouraged her, we planned, and we helped her and all of that. And today that water plant has become operational thanks to her. She ensures, she and her lady team ensure that there's collection of money on time, so that there's enough surplus money to run the motors. There is no diesel expenditure shortage, and hence the plant is running. Hence there are more subscribers, and hence the plant is turning profitable. And with this, just over the year, with this, now for the next elections, they're saying she should only contest, even though it's not a women reserved seat. So affirmative action definitely helps. So in terms of policy, if it can't just be a footnote, but in terms of design also, in terms of the perspective, it is an afterthought. It should stop being an afterthought and it should be a forethought. You can't forget 50% of the population and only cater to 50%. So the journey has to be hand in hand. And especially in bank loans, there are a lot of programs under startup. We have Swayam here. A lot of the loans, if they can be directed to women, as a mandatory reservation affirmative action, it would really take forward the cause. And ultimately, it is the little things we do. More women in leadership positions, talking more about why it is all right, empowers more and more number of people. I remember, I think Indra Nooyi had mentioned that it's all right if I'm not a great mother. You women, it's okay if women can't have it all. And that made me feel that, okay, I can perhaps balance the personal and professional too. So it's women coming forward in these positions and talking more about women issues also helps carry forward. So when, in terms of a government perspective, if you look at it, like compared to what Sridevi ma'am's time had started to now, there are much more women in the services, more women talking about these things that perhaps were uncomfortable earlier. So it has to be the new normal, as in it can't be an avoidable topic or a topic that needs separate attention, feminism or gender disparity. It has to be normalized and it has to be moved forward. And that is something that government can definitely drive through.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Deepthi, you have a point? Would you like to say something?
Yes, I'd like to really compliment Kirti on what she was just mentioning. I think we really need to talk about normalizing the things. So first thing is that I come from a platform called as VHub. The first question is I'm always asked is that you say always, again, I'm a big proponent of saying that women, men equal. We are talking about gender equality, not about diversity and all that other stuff. There is a gender imbalance. We need to correct that. So first of all, the first question I'm always asked is, you're standing on a platform which actually is only for women, and then you're actually talking about equality. How do you balance that? That is a very interesting paradox that I always need to answer. But the main reason is that we are trying to correct the gender imbalance. Second thing is coming down to this entire, I will leave the policy making to all the policy makers here. But in my very small sphere of VHub, what we've actually done is, as Kirti and Sridevi ma'am and Pamela also mentioned, we actually have a child mother's room in our office, which is, I think, one of the few offices which actually has a mother's room. Because we work purely with women-led startups, we want to actually say that family and career are not exclusive to each other. They just happen they just happen at the same time. Second thing is that we have a child play area also, where if somebody has a small child, they can actually bring the child here, and we have some certified people who can actually take care of the child as well, so that the women can not have the guilt of leaving the child at home while she pursues her career, because I think that is one of the biggest questions a lot of women who want to progress in their career do have, family or career. The next thing is that when we come to the rural side of things, as Sridevi ma'am mentioned, there are a lot of rural women who actually want to do a lot of things, but they're always held back by what should I choose. So to answer that, what we do is, when we take these rural women into our program, we also invite the husband in for a conversation and a counseling session. We don't call it counseling, but what we do is we actually emphasize on the successes that the female member who is selected for our program is achieving, and we actually make sure that we compliment her so much and we glorify her work, saying that she's doing something which nobody else in that village has been able to do. She actually got through a very tough selection process, and that has motivated a lot of men to support their women entrepreneurs in their family quite a bit. That has helped quite a bit. The second thing that is also quite
again, this is a request to the policymakers, is that we have a lot of women when we go to the rural areas who want to do stuff, but they always come in and say, we want to expand, but the men in our family will never agree. They will not let us grow. And it is way beyond VHub for actually get into all that, because we are in the space of entrepreneurship, creating opportunities for creating, making them job creators. But when it comes to family and all that, I don't know how to address those questions. So that is one thing I'd like to request for the policymakers to also address. I cannot get into the legalities of family because my job is only very small entrepreneurship. But these women do come to us and tell us that, I want to go forward, I want to do things. How do I convince the men in my family? The last important thing, coming down to the loans, as ma'am and Kirti had also mentioned, we do conduct a lot of credit linkage camp, right? Because, MEPMA, SERB, there are so many schemes that are there to promote livelihood entrepreneurship, so to speak, and also under various government schemes. The first person who applies is always a man, because the company is registered by the women. When we call them asking, why do you need the loan? The woman is always like, we insist that the women only speak to us, and we insist it's a video conference. So the 99.9% of the time we see this. Okay, whenever we ask a question, there is always a side to the left, and then they are being directed by the husband as to what to say. Many a time we actually say, ma'am, you please stop talking, let the husband come and talk to us. So we do a little bit of social shaming like this, and over time we do 6 to 7 calls like this with the same person, because she needs to understand that if her loan has to be approved, she needs to start speaking up. So that has also helped. So we can't do policy changes, but we are doing a little bit of shaming, so to speak, and a little bit of bringing more women out and telling them that they need to speak up for themselves, and that has been our experience in a way at VHub. But yeah, the aspect of women wanting to do things and not being able to do it is something that I would like to request the policymakers here to help us out with.
Dr. Malini, I would like to just comment a few points.
Please.
We always are so focused about maternity leave, somewhere such that we forget that there exists a paternity leave of 15 days. And many times, I think companies or institutions, organizations should encourage their menfolk to take the paternity leave and exclusively use the paternity leave for the designated purpose. I really doubt it ever happens that way. In fact, I have seen organizations very closely reject paternity leave, saying, what will you do with it? So, am I audible, Dr. Malini?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so that is one point, and like everybody rightly pointed out, policy is, based on very subtle behavioral aspects in every person, in every society. So here also, somewhere the kind of skilling we inject into a group also defines what kind of
I think we've lost her. So in the time she comes back, I would, as a closure of this particular round, I have a question for Priya. Priya, come back. In discussions about policy and institutional structure, ma'am, you're back. Yeah,
I'm back. Okay, I assume. So I was talking about the skilling actually. Sometimes subconsciously or in our desperate attempt to empower in some sort of way, like something is better than nothing approach, perhaps we have
seems to be a network issue. So Priya, we'll come back to you by the time ma'am finds her.
Yeah, am I audible? I'm sorry, my network is funny today. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are, but there's a lot of background noise and all that.
Yeah, so I hope it doesn't disconnect this time. I just wanted to make one point that in our attempt to skill, we have to question ourselves, are we subconsciously or unconsciously injecting a pattern into skilling, saying that tailoring is for women?
I think Pamela is talking about stereotypes in terms of jobs as well as skills, which is very well taken. Maybe she is not able to connect, but that's
Yes,
what
ma'am.
I get. But she has done an excellent initiatives in her Warangal stint where she started off so well, bringing lot of changes. And I think that at the helm of affairs, when women officers are, definitely it makes a difference in how the stereotypes are understood. And I think consciously we need to break those gender stereotypes, because when she in the beginning she mentioned about the saturated saturation at the pyramid of sanitation, most of the women are only at that level. So maybe we need to take it from there. And when you're actually talking about skilling and all, definitely we need to look at what are those which are which needn't be restricted to gender. So it has to be a little more fair, gender fair, to bring in. That would be the first step for maybe gender parity. Otherwise, well, we are trying to make the balance is not going to be there. Either you do it too much of this or that, it's not going to work out, because that would be an overload for women taking up both responsibilities.
So Pamela ma'am, Dr. Sridevi spoke on your behalf, and she's sort of spoke about, you're still on mute, ma'am. You're still on mute.
I just wanted to, I missed Madam's point, but I would just want to add just one small aspect in the skilling part. Are we subconsciously pushing one kind of skilling into the empowerment initiative? Or, I mean, that's just one of my personal thoughts, because here when I saw ladies here in sanitation sector especially had a desire to wear boots. So it was very interesting. I asked our people, are we giving them gum boots to ladies? Our people said, no, we are not giving, because we are giving those boots to only those people who drive the sanitation truck or the tractor or the Swachh auto, and they do those desludging kind of operations. So it was very interesting, because they were not focusing on the skill like driving or doing the heavy job, but they were focusing on the shoe. So as a part of, pushing through a uniform, dress code to all, I made sure that there is a unisex shoe for both the men and the women. And women were very happy with it, because now the gum boot or the gum boot is no more the dividing force. The driving skill still is. So now even government of Telangana, madam will be aware that it's pushing for mobile toilets based out of RTC buses, for encouraging women to use public toilets in random places, inculcating more flexibility in public toilets. So but again the question is, who will drive those mobile bus toilets? Have we skilled enough women to drive those buses? Now in have been able to bridge the gumboots barrier, but I'm still looking for women drivers who can drive those two RTC buses that will be converted into sheet toilets. So very subtle initiatives, but we have to ask ourselves, what are we supposed to do for these kind of differences? Talking about policy, not just policy. Policy is a very big word. Small interventions in many spaces, especially sanitary pads. Everybody makes in every state these days. But how many of these pads get to be a profitable venture or see the light of the day? And like Kirti Madam rightly pointed out, affirmative action has to be there in these sectors. So as a part of that affirmative action, what we did here is, we started giving our own sanitary workers 2 packets of sanitary pads that are manufactured by our SHEs. So small things, but I think policy is a long way, a big way to go, but maybe small interventions will help out bridge differences in the long term.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So I actually, as a follow-up of this discussion, wanted to ask Priya as a final conclusion or concluding comment to this round, that how does she see it from the other side? What are the kind of changes that she would like to see, corporates would like to see in government with regards to women empowerment, whether it is in terms of behavior, policies, instruments? How do corporates, or how do you look at that? What is it that you'd like to see as a change?
Well, so I'm not technically qualified to answer that, but broadly, companies respond very well to two things, right? Regulation and incentives. And so if there is sort of positive regulation to say X number of women have to be there, I mean, why did why did companies support Swachh Bharat? Because the Prime Minister told them to, right? So, some of these really have to come top down. So I think the question really for us is to say that how do you look at the corporate sector and how do you find the different influencers who are going to shift behavior and shift it significantly, right? Whether it's consumers demanding a lot more investment in women projects. I mean, the reality is that go and ask Gillette who their advertising is focused on. Women buy razors and shaving cream for men, right? It's not the men who buy it. So women actually have a lot of power that we don't really see. I mean, 70% of household buying decisions are made by women. And so how do we put pressure from policymakers? How do we put pressure from women consumers? How do we put pressure from women employees? I mean, companies are falling over themselves to try and address their gender and diversity quota, right? So the more women in the workforce need to demand, better facilities, better policies, etc. So it can't be, you can't press one lever, right? It has to be take every pressure point that you can imagine, whether it's soft pressure, hard pressure, incentives, women on boards, women on, investor committees, right? And it really needs to be sort of a concerted effort that all of us have to make. And like I said, I think it's two things. One, put pressure where it needs to be put. And the other is just ignore the bias and bring in gender into the conversation and bring it, with full throttle. I mean, don't give them an option. So, I mean, a couple of things that we've done is very simple, right? One is, for example, even when we recruit, I always tell my HR, I want to see as many applications from women as men. Don't even come to me if, I don't have the same number of applications. The second is, when we present projects, I just say that your first 3 projects will all be on gender, push everything else at the bottom. Just change the placement. I think, Kirti, you talked about it, right? Subtle differences, just get the women to eat first. And a lot of times people don't even notice that you're actually changing the dynamic. So whenever you are in that position of influence, by all means, use that position of influence. Either you talk about it or make it subtle, but make it work. So broadly, I think, my only sort of closing point is that what I saw on this panel and, everything that you presented before are tremendous examples of change. And the question is, how do each of us take it and just, wear that badge of honor very proudly? So that if people say there aren't enough examples, you're able to say, here are enough examples. When people say there aren't enough leaders, you point to it and say there are enough leaders. When people say there aren't enough opportunities, you say there are enough opportunities, right? So I'm just saying that, collect the data, the insights, the examples, the champions, and do it together. Do it for WASH, do it for health, do it for across the board, right? Where gender just has to be front and center. And I don't mean gender, as women versus men, right? It just has to be together. And I find that the one thing that at least I have learned over a period of time is women are so collaborative and we are so okay asking for help. And I find that, in this very subtle way of please tell me what to do, we actually manage to do a whole lot more than what men, are able to do. So I'm just saying, use what comes naturally to you. Think of it as a power. I don't think of it as a weakness. And I mean, I do this in my board all the time, right? I'm the only woman. And I know before my board meeting exactly what I need to get done. It's just that I always say, you tell me what I should do. And I do it in any way. So it's just a question of saying, let's not be confrontational in our own very gentle, nurturing way. We all figure, and, all of you kind of gave examples, right? Of just getting your own way. Just didn't seem like this was us versus them at all. Just, us in it together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, please go on. I don't mean to stop you.
No, so I think what I would love to see is, how do we take everything that we've heard and shared and learned and really put it out there and imbibe it in all the work that we do going forward. So Dr. Malini would very much like to continue these conversations offline, not just with the speakers, but also with the participants and all of the wonderful stories that you presented. And I'd almost say that if I were to raise funding for, raise support for, amplify the work of at least 10 things that I've heard today, then I would consider success sort of coming out of this panel.
Thank you so much, Priya, for those nice words. And definitely, I think there is a lot of merit in what you say, that idea is not to be confrontational. Idea is also to be super smart in understanding how to get get to what one really needs to get to. Having said it, women do bring very, very unique skills and capacities and capabilities to the table. I mean, it is not a matter of coincidence that Deepti's office serves the best coffee and Sridevi Ma'am's office serves the best adrak chai. So there is something there's a personal touch to things that women bring, and it goes a long way. Of course, one thing that I'm quite concerned about is at times some of the initiatives that are taken with an intention of doing something good can have some unintended consequences, because in our eagerness to help someone, we may actually be damaging a few things. And that's where the role of researchers come in. That's where the role of women organizations who can look into these societal aspects a little more in detail to support policymakers and implementers in doing their job well, because the intentions are very good. The outcome should also match with it. So with those words, we've already crossed our time, and I have nowhere to go, but you're all very busy ladies. I would just like to leave the floor open. If there are any words of advice, maybe something that you feel really strongly about, and one word of advice that you would like to give to the participants. Because if you see the chat box, a lot of ladies who are asking that, how do we get noticed in our organization? How do we sustain any change that one, like tomorrow, Pamela ma'am leaves the city, how does that the initiative she started continue to gain momentum, not just sustain, but gain momentum? So any words of advice as a parting note that you would like, then we'll take those and then close the session. And Priya, to your point, I think we will work on what you have suggested and what Dr. Kajal has suggested, and we will work on this idea of having a network of women change champions in WASH, so that we can have this conversation in a continued manner and share experiences and build a more momentum. So I'll leave the floor open. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to advise a little bit, maybe, because I think I'm good with my experience. I can definitely do that. When I joined service as an young officer, my boss told me, if you are a woman officer or at the helm of things, then there is going to be a lot of attention that is being given either by the media or by the people around. Don't get fooled by that, because that is where you tend to become frivolous if you're only getting those positive strokes and you're floating on them. So the best thing for women to stay at the top and continue to be influential, or as an influencer, you have to have your hard work. So if you're able to do the job well and put all your effort and come up with your no less than any other officer or any other person, whatever gender, if you're able to do your best, then definitely I think we will overcome that barrier of women being, the fairer sex, or women being given postings which are, even in government, you see that a lot of departments, they're earmarked for women. And there are a lot of subjects that are earmarked as a core men department. So this is not something at the bottom that is there about having this discrimination in terms of your gender. For you to overcome this, one thing is you need to work hard, you need to keep your heads up, and then you need to speak up. What actually Kirti was talking about in one of the things is like talking about the period leave is something which was not there at all. So that is something like women should really understand and assert themselves that they are what they are and they are here to deliver, not that they are going to take off or they're not going to be there. I'll just close with this thing. In S Minister, there was one, why women don't get into the top of bureaucrats. They say that because children get measles. Can you connect these two things? No. You know what? Whenever children get measles, women take leave and they don't actually participate in the complete process of promotions and all. That means they take a back step. So that is where women lose out. When they are performing their roles, they actually lose out. And that is where you can actually surmount this kind of an obstacle, which as a mother, as women face, is only by doing hard work, and always your hard work is going to pay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other words of advice, final thoughts?
To wrap up, we've also learned about all the sheroes in your booklet, those women who've done great work in sanitation, and these are across platforms. Also hearing stories from the private sector, from the B Hub, and from, of course, within the government. The one request that I've always had, and which is something that I constantly try and tell, is just speak up. It's the ultimate thing is to question. So, question why to these archaic traditions, why not to obstacles, and a hell yeah to, challenges. Just speak up and a woman will keep going forward. And it was a, very highly marketed phenomena that women don't get along with women. I think it was an artificial construct to ensure that we don't get too strong, So I really want to again call out to the sisterhood. We help each other, and that's the only way we move forward, and that is through collective progress. So, let us all help together, and let us all help each other, and that is possible by speaking up. And I thank you for organizing this, especially with women panelists. It's a tradition to have men on the subjects of women who only are talking about what women should do and what women should have. These panel discussions are usually with men. So thank you. And let's keep speaking up on what is right and what is wrong and what a woman can always do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Priya, you want to say something?
One last thing, which is, I think just be yourself, trust your instincts, right? Listen to everyone. I listen to all the men and all the women and, my son who believes that he has a point of view and everything. I listen to everyone, right? And the more you listen, the more you learn, but really follow your instincts and do what comes naturally to you. And I find that, even on this panel, all women are smiling, and we realize that we get a lot of work done actually by smiling. I know it's a gender stereotype, but I find that, we tend to take on very harsh and difficult situations, and we continue to smile through it, and it keeps our sanity, but I think it also makes us progress, much faster than men once we put our mind to it. So don't let anyone tell you who you should be. Feel free to listen and let it out. I was told very early on in my career, and somebody also wrote that, to say that, Priya, you're very transactional. Well, I have to be transactional. I don't have time to, sit back, go out for a drink. You go out for a drink, you attract uninvited attention, and then you have to pay the sort of you have to bear the consequences of that. And I felt terrible in my earlier career to say, yes, I'm being very, very transactional. But honestly, it's the only way we can get work done, right? We have to come across as being serious and committed. And men don't get it, and I don't even expect them to get it. So I've continued doing my own thing. And I realized that, back then I didn't have the confidence, but now I do. So stay true to yourself and, take in all of the good and ignore all of the bad. It's not worth our time. But this has been an amazing session. So I'm going into the weekend, very charged up and very inspired. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for joining. So Dr. Pamela, ma'am, any thoughts, or shall we close the session? Any final words? Okay. To unmute, ma'am. To unmute yourself. Pamela, ma'am, we couldn't hear you. You have to unmute yourself. Yeah, sorry.
So I think mentally close this webinar. So I think I can see only 4 boxes, including mine. I'll just smile and a bye, and have a great weekend, all of you. Thank you. It was such a fruitful session. Yes. Bye.
Thank you everyone, and thank you to all the participants for staying on much beyond the planned time and for your active participation on the chat. We will be in touch with you in case you need a copy of the book beyond what is available on the website. Please feel free to contact us, or for anything else, please do feel free to write to us. Right? Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.